Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a totally gripping character study from our source material. We're looking at a man living an extreme double life in the seemingly quiet, picket fence town of Elmwood. On the surface, Elias Crowe is exactly the kind of guy you want teaching your kids. He's 34, runs marathons, and works as a super dedicated, warm fifth-grade teacher. You know, the guy who stays late to help with math homework and actually notices if a kid's lunchbox is empty. But as soon as the sun goes down, that unassuming teacher just vanishes. In his place emerges a shadow, a highly methodical force known only in the desperate whispers of this town as the Guardian.
No child will feel this alone again. Not if I can stop it. We're starting right at the emotional core of the story with that chilling childhood promise. Listen, this isn't just some catchy tagline. It's literally the foundation of Elias's entire existence. This promise was born in the dark, forged in the fires of a horrific trauma he endured as a young boy. It's the exact moment a terrified kid decided to eventually become a terrifying protector. It shows us right off the bat that the Guardian wasn't created out of some desire for glory or an adrenaline rush, but out of a desperate, deep-seated need to be the shield he never had.
Part 1. A Tale of Two Lives. Let's look at this stark duality. The contrast between his two identities is honestly jarring. By day, Mr. Crowe is the safe zone. He teaches kids about fractions, right? Showing them how to break complex things down into manageable parts so the whole thing is easier to handle. But by night, well, the Guardian literally breaks abusers down. He uses his marathon runner discipline not to stay fit, but to hunt. He uses his trusted position as a teacher not just to educate, but as a silent surveillance network. He operates with no cape, no flashy gimmicks, just pure, cold, calculated efficiency.
Part 2, Origins of the Guardian. Let's see exactly how this all started.
So at age 8, his whole life shifts when his mother marries Victor Hale, a man who genuinely believed children just needed toughening up. The breaking point happens at age 10. It's his birthday, and Victor smashes Elias's new toy truck. When Elias protests, Victor literally shatters his ribs with a single punch. And his mother? She did nothing. Fast forward to college. Elias doesn't study education out of pure idealism. No, he studies it to get close to children so he can watch over them. And at the exact same time, he's secretly training in martial arts, parkour, and hacking. By age 26, the preparation finally meets opportunity. He overhears a student whispering about bruises, investigates the situation, and the Guardian officially steps out of the shadows to ensure that stepmother never lays a finger on that child again.
You ain't my blood, so don't expect my mercy. Stepkid like you? You're lucky I put a roof over your head. That cruel philosophy from Victor Hale directly programmed Elias's deep-seated mission. You ain't my blood? Man, that phrase echoed through Elias's entire life. It instilled this incredibly specific focus in him, protecting vulnerable stepchildren from the actual monsters hiding in their own homes. Victor's twisted worldview, that power means inflicting pain on anyone who isn't biological family, became the exact evil that Elias dedicated his life to wiping out.
Part 3. The methodology. Here is how he actually pulls this off.
He operates with a highly specific 5-step playbook. First, he transforms his classroom into an observation deck, constantly watching for withdrawn behavior or flinching. Then, he investigates. He uses a shadow network of disillusioned social workers, plus his own hacking skills, to breach private forums and home security cameras. Next comes the infiltration, which is always silent and totally calculated. But step 4? Step 4 is where the reality of his crusade really hits you. He mirrors the abuse. He inflicts the exact type of pain the abuser uses on the child, making absolutely sure they vividly feel the terror they caused. Finally, he forces a signed, legally binding confession and a permanent separation from the child, leaving perfectly packaged evidence for the authorities to find. It's surgical, it's non-lethal, and it is devastatingly permanent.
Part 4, The 3 Reckonings. Let's break down 3 specific cases.
You really see his methodology and how he customizes his retribution to fit the crime perfectly. For 9-year-old Mia, who is bruised by her stepmom Carla, Elias uses a weighted baton to strike Carla in those exact same spots. For 11-year-old Tommy, whose hands were scalded and was locked in a freezing basement by his stepdad Marco, well, Elias subjects Marco to those identical temperature extremes and a cage. And then for 12-year-old Sophie, who is psychologically isolated by her wealthy stepdad Derek Vance, Elias uses Derek's own high-tech panic room against him. The punishment always mirrors the crime. Let's look closer at Incident 1, Shadow in the Kitchen. So Carla justified her abuse by claiming stepkids just need discipline.
Elias disables Carla's security camera, slips through an unlocked basement window, and drops her with a precise taser jolt. As he ties her to a kitchen chair, he delivers this chilling line, "You know nothing of discipline." He confronts Carla with his own deeply buried memories of Victor's belt. He uses a weighted baton to inflict the exact deep muscle pain she caused Mia, all while forcing her to watch looped, secret video recordings of Mia crying. By 4 a.m., he breaks her completely. She signs the confession, she leaves the house forever. And days later in class, Mia hands Mr. Crowe a drawing of a bright rainbow instead of the dark storms she used to draw. The system worked perfectly.
Moving on to Incident 2, the basement monster.
This one is intense. Marco hates Tommy's piano playing, so he locks the kid in a cold, rat-infested basement and actually scalds his hands. Now, this directly triggers Elias's own trauma of being forced into a freezing shower by his stepfather. Elias sneaks into the basement first, and he actually unmasks briefly. He steps out of the shadow to show Tommy his kind, familiar teacher eyes, giving him a blanket and a promise of absolute safety. Then he goes upstairs, chokes out Marco, and drags him down to the site of his own crimes. When Marco breaks free, we get this brutal physical struggle, fists flying, bodies slamming into the concrete. But Elias is trained for this. He pins Marco, delivers debilitating nerve strikes, and leaves him a terrified shell of a man. Tommy's hands are safe to play the piano once again. Which brings us to Incident 3, the locked room.
Derek was a different beast altogether. Sophisticated, wealthy, armed with lawyers, and crucially, he left no physical marks on 12-year-old Sophie. Elias actually had to use some ethically gray hacking just to get the evidence. When he breaches Derek's upscale home, Derek tries to reach for a gun, but Elias disarms him effortlessly. What follows is this cinematic brawl, shattering glass, tumbling downstairs. Elias ultimately locks Derek in his own panic room, simulating days of psychological isolation in mere hours. But the real climax of this encounter is emotional. Elias unmasks. He shows his face and his own deep scars to Derek. He says, "I had a stepfather like you. I still wake up screaming sometimes, but I didn't become him. You chose to." He uses his own humanity and vulnerability to utterly shatter Derek's psychological control over Sophie.
Part 5. Justice or Vengeance? Let's unpack the aftermath. This all builds a deeply complex moral picture, doesn't it? On one hand, we have Elias's justification. We're looking at a bureaucracy that continually fails children, kids who simply cannot wait for the courts to intervene while they are actively suffering. Plus, his methods are technically non-lethal. He leaves the abusers alive so they're forced to regret what they've done and reform. But on the other hand, we have to seriously weigh the massive personal toll. Elias visits his mother's grave apologizing. He lives in these nightly trauma loops, constantly reliving Victor's abuse. He harbors this simmering rage, and he operates on a terrifyingly blurred moral line. Every single punishment he doles out is, in a way, him trying to therapeutically confront his own childhood ghost. And that leaves us with a final, truly provocative question to think about. There is absolutely no denying that Elias Crowe successfully stopped the cycle of abuse for his students. Mia, Tommy, Sophie, they got their rainbows, their music, and their freedom back. But as he stands there, looking out into the gathering storm at the end of our source material, we have to ask ourselves, by becoming a monster in the shadows to fight the monsters in the home, did he actually end the violence? Or did he just redirect it? It's an unsettling question for sure, but it's exactly what makes the anatomy of this vigilante so incredibly compelling.